Hello and welcome to my second presentation as part of Second Life MOOC 2016. This second presentation came about when I was discussing with one of the organizers about presenting as part of the MOOC, and in addition to organizing concerts for 9 years in Second Life, which I presented on last week, and you'll find that presentation online on the SLMOOC16 Moodle site. I shared that I'd been learning and assisting with a course as a community TA in the game world of Lord of the Rings Online. And so this is a brief introduction to a world in which I still consider myself a newbie, and as such it is a curated presentation of collected materials with some of my own thoughts. I'd like to welcome you all on this brief visit to a world that's been my third home between real life and my work in Second Life that's almost a decade old now, to Middle Earth, which I began to explore in summer 2014. And my first character, Katamir, is a level 100 elf hunter, and serves as an officer in the Corsarim kinship on the Landravel server. What I hope we'll cover during this hour is to look at the media and literary education that is operating within the Lord of the Rings Online currently, and also the new learning cultures that are growing up within massive multiplayer online role-playing games. And also because of course everyone knows Kate Miranda is all about music, a little bit of looking at the Lotro music system. Second Life can be a very welcoming place, and I'm going to share with you a little video clip that I took of a St. Patrick's Day party just last month. And this was held by the Concerning Hobbits kinship, and Corsarim kinship was welcome to invited to come along. And of course, keep in mind that these are not non-player characters, NPCs, but real people who are choosing to clap and jump and dance to the music and be in a social setting within a game world of Middle Earth in the Lord of the Rings Online game. but it's not always a welcoming place. And of course, it's the challenges of gameplay that draw players to multiplayer online games, and it's what makes them fun. But it makes the environment very different for the educator from relative calm of a virtual world. Of course, I get asked why did I choose to enter the game of Lord of the Rings online, especially considering that I not only have a busy career but have a absorbing music project in Second Life. And actually, they're all related. I had a great deal of curiosity about the gamers and game designers that I'd met in Second Life, and I had a feeling that I was missing a part of 21st century culture to not experience massive multiplayer online games, role-playing games myself. My kids, from the days of tabletop Dungeons and Dragons to the beginning text adventures and so on, had brought me into the gaming world, but only as an over-their-shoulder observer, and I'd not really played myself, apart from a very brief run at Myst, which I found frustrating and I never got the hang of. I had a curiosity, too, about the similarities and differences between massive online role-playing games and virtual worlds. I was surprised that there's not more overlap than there was, and most of the people that I met that had a toe in both worlds were actually professional game designers or graphic designers, and so this was a career for them. But there weren't too many people that were involved in both worlds, and that surprised me. And I also had a lifelong love of the Tolkien novels. I first read The Hobbit when I was 9 years old and sick at home, confined to bed for a period of time, and it really was a lifelong love affair with fantasy that began from that serendipity of the children's librarian that suggested that as one of the books that my mother take home for an ill child. And I also spotted a serendipitous course offering from Coursera at a time when I just had a little more time, and I thought, well, this will be a guided opportunity for me to put my toe in a new experience. So I signed up, and I had no idea what I was getting into in terms of the commitment and the fun and the fact that I would be still very much a part of Lord of the Rings online culture and social life 2 years later, still absorbed in the game. The course will be offered again this summer, so if you watch the Coursera site, and the URL will be in my note card, you can share the enjoyment and learning that is part of this course. And I'm just going to play the introductory video that Professor Jay Clayton made for the course, because he can tell you about it much better than I can.
Hi, I'm Jay Clayton, Professor of English at Vanderbilt University. This spring, we'll begin an exciting adventure, the exploration of the connections between literature and online gaming. What do games like World of Warcraft have to do with the great literature of the Western canon? How does Peter Jackson's film of The Lord of the Rings rework stories and images and themes that reach back centuries before J.R.R. Tolkien? The games we'll be studying in this class are called MMOs, Massively Multiplayer Online Games. The most famous one is World of Warcraft, but we'll be studying The Lord of the Rings online. The reason for this is simple. The Lord of the Rings allows us to study what happens when you take a story from a book and move it to a film and then to an online game. Seeing the contrast among these forms teaches us important principles about narrative. It helps us understand stories and characters, action, plot, adventure on a very different level when we can see the changes that must take place to do it in 2 hours for a film or 2 months for an online game. I've been teaching this course for a decade at Vanderbilt University. Now I'm excited for the opportunity to teach this course for you.
One of the main differences between media is the time that we invest in telling a story and how long it takes us to absorb the story in various media. And this changes the dynamic enormously. When we think about the time it takes to read a novel, read even the 3 volumes of The Lord of the Rings, it's a matter of weeks or months. If we read a bit of it a day, it'll probably take us 2 months, but I know that I can read it obsessively over a period of time of having a bad case of the flu and read my way through it in 1 to 2 weeks. And the film version, we're going to tell a story within 2 hours for each film, so things have to be enormously condensed. And it's a visual format, so we have to communicate things visually rather than through text-based. In the game, we have both text and visual elements, and the time that it takes us to go all the way through the epic quest seems to be about a year. I've worked my way through the entire epic twice, and each time it took me just about 1 year to complete, playing maybe 3 or 4 times a week, a few hours at a time. One thing that's in common between both novel and film forms is that in each of these formats you are an observer, whereas in-game you're a participant, and so you become part of the story. And in the case of keeping the Lord of the Rings narrative true to the novel, what the game designers have done is create stories which are on the fringes and don't impede on the original narrative. And in a few occasional quests, you actually enter into the main story by taking on the appearance and persona of one of the characters, which is I found a very interesting way of telling a narrative. But unfortunately, in terms of pedagogy, it occurs rather late in the game, and so you would only be able to engage characters which have leveled up to a considerable degree to get into those quests. There are a number of quests around level 75, as I recall, that involve a retelling of the story of the breaking of the Fellowship. And in this series of quests, you take on the characters of Frodo, of Boromir, and of Sam. It involves the story of Boromir's betrayal, where he tries to steal the ring from Frodo. Frodo flees, deciding that he must make his way alone to Mordor. Boromir is struck with grief for his momentary lapse, and dies, saving the lives of Merry and Pippin, who are taken captive by the orcs at this dividing point in the story. And seeing it from the various angles allows us to have in-depth reflection on what motivates Boromir. I emerged certainly with more sympathy for the character of Boromir after this experience of acting out the story. It took a lot longer to work through these quests than to read the incident in the novel, because you were seeing the same incidents from different perspectives. As I was preparing for this presentation and considering about how the game designers of Lord of the Rings Online have adapted the narrative to tell the story through the game, and how we're using it to explore remediation, I came across a video that was very interesting, a discussion between Chris Pearson, who's the head of the design storyline for the game, Michael Drought, a professor from Wheaton College, who's written some books on Tolkien, and Corey Olson, who heads up Mythgard Mondays, an in-game lore series. And actually, I sort of felt like I could just take the day off and just show this video, because it so thoroughly covers the topic. But I've just offered some excerpts here, and the URLs on my note card and on screen. You can watch the full hour video if you like. So here's a few excerpts of that very interesting discussion.
Hi, I'm Chris Pearson. I'm the lead world builder and, as you can see, lore monkey for Lord of the Rings Online. I'm here with Corey Olson, the president of the Mythgard Society, and Michael Drought, the professor of English at Wheaton College and author of several books about Tolkien. We're here to discuss lore in the context of Lotro, and specifically the adaptations, the challenges of doing an adaptation of something as expansive as Middle Earth to game form. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about how you're both players of the game as well, mm-hmm. How you've experienced those particular challenges of adapting the stories.
Well, it seems, one of the obvious initial challenges, right, when you think about how to set up the Lord of the Rings world, to set up Tolkien's Middle-earth in game form is magic, right? That's sort of the first, one of the first obvious challenges to mm-hmm. confront, since magic, and especially combat-oriented magic, is such a huge part of the fantasy gaming world and such a major expectation of that audience. But of course, magic, and this comes up all the time, and I mean, I'm sure, Micah does with you as well, when talking to students about Tolkien's world and magic and how magic works. It's something it's sometimes almost difficult to talk about, because it's on the one hand you can say that magic is prevalent in Tolkien's world, and yet it's so often invisible. You don't get, mm-hmm. You can go with Sam halfway through the quest and still have him saying, "I would like to see a bit of magic." Right?
Yeah, there's a Hungarian scholar named Gergely Nagy, a really good scholar. He had argued that you could explain away almost all the magic in Lord of the Rings by technology. In other words, you say the ring is a technology kind of thing. You know, it's got also, you know, there's an actual thing. It has rules it has to follow. You know, and I do point out that the Mirror of Galadriel is hard to to rate, and the Gandalf breaking the bridge with the staff, they're hard to explain away. But yeah, and magic is not something like that everybody has. And obviously, when you play, you know, thinking about original Dungeons and Dragons or something, people want to be magic users, right? And they want to
actual spell.
They want to cast magic missile and you know, other things like that. And so that's you know, and you had that. I'm sure had that problem in designing it because hobbits don't do magic, and most elves, only a few elves seem to do magic, and dwarves don't do magic except in making cool stuff. So
the dwarves of yore made mighty spells, but
and that is true. They made mighty spells. We don't know what the spells are about.
We don't know what that was about, but
But see, even there,
door opening,
right? Door opening, but also, you know, clearly the you know, the weaponry and armor that the dwarves make, you know, is it magic armor? Again, that's vocabulary that Tolkien almost never uses. You know, he rarely calls, you know, a sword a magic sword. It'll be called a sword of worth, for instance. Does that mean it's magical? And again, you know, always, you know, I always keep coming back to that conversation with Sam and Galadriel, right? You know, what do you mean exactly by that word when you ask? Is it is it magical? So there's stuff there. I mean, there's things which can certainly be understood in a magical sense, but it's but actually integrating that, I can see how that's a really big challenge.
Yeah, and that was why, you know, it made Lotro a bit more difficult to do compared with almost any other fantasy MMO property, because of that, because there's, you know, 5 wizards and that's it, and, you know, and some
people
get
to be one of them.
Elrond and Galadriel can kind of do some stuff, and but there's an expectation in the gamer community, and you know, and at this point, rightly so, that you would have the ability to do supernatural or at least extremely powerful things within the context of the game as a player. Because if your whole experience is hitting people in different ways with a sword, that takes a lot of the variety out of the gameplay experience. So our intent from the get-go was to say, okay, there's going to be stuff that is magic in the game, but we are going to try to couch it in the various classes in things that are more familiar in the Tolkien context. So things like, you know, the captain has a lot of basically magical abilities, but they're all about rallying people's courage and giving them strength to move on. And the minstrel, it's all the power of song, which you know, the music being very important to the Tolkien mythos. Right. And the lore keeper, again, there's a little bit of Radagast-y kind of stuff in with him. We tried to keep away from the really flashy stuff and more the burning acorns kind of Gandalf-y magic. And it wasn't really until the Rune Keeper that we found ourselves standing at the line going, do we step over this thing? And, you know, and then people start throwing lightning bolts around, because there was a genuine call for that in the player base. And we were like, okay, well, let's just find a way to make this work. And number one, we restricted it to the sort of the elder races, the elves and the dwarves, right. And we couched it within the power of language. So at least there is a basis to it in the things that were important to Tolkien. You know, it's not just a magic user; he's someone who uses runes to do powerful things. And you know, it's all to an extent, it's kind of just a mask put over a magic user or a healer or what have you, but it's all important to try to keep it within the realm of the mythos while still realizing that we're making a game here, folks.
Quest. But I've been really fascinated at the really careful way in which it's interacting with the actual plot events of the story, and you know, filling in, you know, not, you know, I have not found it to be really sort of stretching outside to pull things in. It deals with some things which it does a great job of pulling in things which, like you said, are things which like need filling in, right?
And they're in the appendices in many ways. Like
Exactly. Or even when you read the history of Middle Earth in Tolkien's.
Yeah. There's a lot of room for really cool exploration of the of the story, and a lot of it, again, the I keep calling them Easter eggs, but I don't just little things that are mentioned slightly that then we get to explore in more detail, whether they're in the Shire or in Rivendell or other places like that. I mean, that's one of the fun parts of the game. I feel like that it would be neat. I don't know, this probably doesn't work well with the economics of the game, but it would be cool to have tourist mode. That you could just go in and walk around, not do quests. But I know that part of it is getting people to do the quests so that they can unlock and get to the other cool new regions. But now that
it would be as the lead world builder, it kills me that people that there's the stuff I'm working on now is stuff that people have to play hours and hours and hours of game to even get to see. So I would love to see something like that sometime. I saw
tourist mode where you can just fly over everything. You're invisible. And it sort of works for people who haven't played up to a high level. When you get to a high enough level, you get to go back to the low levels and nothing bothers you then. And then you can just like stroll around Moria looking at stuff, which is...
Well, I have to say, in the areas that I have played, I always am looking. They ask for, are there any details that are missing that you would find? I usually find them. When I don't know if probably not everybody does this, but when I got to Tom Bombadil's house, the first thing I did was run around the back to see if there were beans on poles.
Me too.
And there were. We got the beans on poles.
You were the guys who did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of stuff like that, like how you the entrance to the old forest and how that's envisioned. Or one of my favorites, because I had real trouble picturing it from the game, is the elf camp in the Woody End. Like, I had real trouble picturing it from the book, and the game I can see it. That must have driven you crazy, because that description is not straight. You have to sketch to even get an idea of what he's trying to describe. There's a cutting and a bank and a tree.
I know. I sat there looking at that passage for a long time going, okay, and then I just started trying things until I got that down.
Yeah, when I got to Crick Hollow, I was really excited when I got to Crick Hollow and met Fatty Bulger, and was delighted to see. I looked for and delighted immediately to find Frodo's cloak slashed there, sitting on the doorstep, where it was supposed to be. So I've been uniformly impressed at the...
And for, I think, the technical English department term or whatever about this would be these are paratexts. All these stories and drawings and artifacts that people make and invent. And if you look at where the culture is going, I think that we're moving from this a passive culture of stare at the screen with a slack jaw to a participatory one in which many hands and minds work, and so that's to me that's really exciting. I've never been on the side of I love my books. Right. I don't ever want to go away from my books, but I love it that I have this option to put the books down and go wander around Middle Earth. And when we finally get the full virtual reality goggles and everything, I'm signing up for that to go to Middle Earth too. Absolutely. And climb around there.
Yeah, I want to put on an Oculus and run around in the game myself.
Yeah, go through Moria and
absolutely
down over because you have some spots in the game too that are really, they can be like scary. You can get yourself up to the edge of a cliff. And that was the part that is, I don't know if this is every player's experience in every different, the first MMO you play, but when I said I was having like nightmares about bears, it was true. And I was also having, dreams of seeing and walking through this stuff in a way that you just, as amazing and beautiful and evocative as the books are, they don't engage your eyes in the way that the game does. And it's quite remarkable, and I hope that you guys find stuff to do after Gondor and Mordor too, and even Rune and Harad, where the stars are strange.
Where the stars are strange.
I found it very interesting that in the discussion, the idea of tourist mode in the game came up. It's an idea that I've heard discussed by characters in the game, also players in the game. And The problem with level gates is that you have to be at a certain level to enter certain instances and to travel to certain areas, because the challenges in the game are just too high for your character. We complain oftentimes in Second Life about the amount of time that it takes to bring new people in and orient them and teach them how to walk and to do certain basic skills within Second Life. It's much more of a challenge within a game like Lotro, because you're first of all, the orientation, the introduction sequence probably takes you an entire evening or even two to work through. But in a 5 to 6 week course, probably you're really not going to be able to get past about 2 or 3 regions. You'll be able to be in Arid Loon and the Shire and Bree, and that's about it. Because to get to other levels, you're just not going to have time. Well, until someone acts upon the idea of creating a tourist mode for Lord of the Rings Online, there are 3 options to use the game for educators. One is to limit the explorations of remediation within the game to the lower level areas that newcomers to the game could be able to achieve within the usual span of a course, or offer newbies video only options so that they could follow along and learn from the content within Lotro without actually playing the game to that level. And both of those options are used in the course offered by Dr. J. Clayton from Vanderbilt on the Coursera MOOC service. He has a distinction track and a standard track that people can choose. And certainly I can say, as a newcomer, doing the distinction track is quite challenging and quite vigorous, but I'm really glad that I did. And the third option is to develop programs specifically for the gamer community. And this type of new gamer-centric learning within virtual worlds and within games is a very new form of learning community that during the discussion came up that we're moving away from a world in which we passively absorb content on the television, and I believe that we're moving away from a world in which we are passive consumers of education. We're creating our own education within our communities. In the course Online Games, Literature, New Media, and Narrative, students were asked to compare the events of occurring on Mount Weathertop across the 3 media in the novel, the film, and the game. And students were invited to do this either through essays and photographs, snapshots in game, or through films. And I thought I would take 2 typical film results and share them with you to give you a feeling of the types of observations that students made during the course.
Hi, so this is Idrian. She's a level 85 Law Master from Lorien. So she's rather far away from her home at the moment, but that's because she's about to investigate the remediation of the setting and the landscape of Weathertop from the book into the game and the film. Now we're going to start here at Candace's encampment, which is where the Weathertop questline really starts. Now if you look around, you'll notice that we're in a hollow. Now in the book, Tolkien describes a sheltered hollow at the bottom of which there was a bowl-shaped dell with grassy sides, which seems to be pretty much what we're in here. So this is very true, mind that tree there, this is very true to the description in the book. And in general, the whole of this area is pretty accurate. The whole of the Midgewater marshes, the positioning and the very turns in the road are exactly as described in the book. We even have, if you look here in front of me, we even have the remains of the old road that the Men of the West built, that Strider tells the hobbits about, and that's here. But we're going to turn now and head towards Weathertop. Now in the book, the ascent up Weathertop is pretty much skimmed over, and the focus is on what happens afterwards, or what happens at the top actually. At the top in the book, the hobbits find this white stone that Gandalf has written some runes on, and then they go down again, and that's pretty much it. But in the game, the ascent of Weathertop is actually a pretty important part. There's the instance, of course, where you have to fight your way up, which is something that doesn't appear in the book or the film. And it's a way of making the landscape more interactive. This climb is part of the quest structure of the game. As you notice, as we get higher up, the road becomes more narrow, and when you actually get to the very top, it's very narrow indeed, and many times I've jumped and fallen off to my death at the bottom. Now, as I'm running up to the summit, I want to tell you about, in the book, what the hobbits actually find at the top. Now, the first thing that happens when they get up there is we get this lovely bit of foreshadowing, where they look at the view down to the south, down across to the east, and they see the road, they see the glint of water to the east, and these are all zones that actually appear in this map and that are part of the game. But the most important part is that the hobbits actually see their path for the rest of the book laid out before them. They see the Trollshaws, the mountains of Rivendell, and beyond that the snow of the Misty Mountains. And as we get up here to the top, and we'll go to the edge, and we'll see that the view here is not quite the same. As I was starting this, it was raining, so at least that's cleared up now, but as you can see, although the view is very nice from up here, it's nothing compared to what Tolkien actually describes, due to graphics, or whatever really. So we'll turn around now and look at the actual summit. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of space up here. In the book, it doesn't really talk about what space up here at all. It just talks about the positioning of the ruins, the circlet of stone, which is exactly what we have here. But in the film, it's a lot more cramped, and the hobbits don't really have room to move when the riders attack. Frodo especially just falls over his own feet. And I'm going to talk about the film a little bit more now, because it's very interesting that Peter Jackson actually moved the scene of the attack by the riders to the summit of Weathertop itself, because in the book it actually happens at the dell where we were at the start of this video. Strider makes it very clear in the book that staying too long on Weathertop would be very dangerous, and heading towards the south people would see them, and so they actually stay the night in the dell. Whereas in the film, the hobbits run up to the summit as soon as they suspect that the Black Riders are coming. But in the book, there's a lot of suspense for this attack. You see the moon behind Weathertop shining, you get the sense of unease as the hobbits see black shapes creeping towards them, and then you see the shadows rising up with a faint hiss of venomous breath and a thin piercing chill in the air. It's all handled very slowly and gradually, and the overall effect is pretty creepy actually. Now the film is a lot more fast-paced for obvious reasons, and it's a lot less subtle in its impact. The attack, setting the attack here makes it a lot more dramatic, but I also think it's a nice way of acknowledging the history that Tolkien talks about in this chapter. If you read the chapter, there's actually a lot of lore in it. I mean, there's the tale of Gil-galad, there's the tale of Beren and Luthien, and there's also the history of the Watchtower and Amon Sul and all of that. So obviously you can't put this in a film because it takes a lot of time and there are time constraints on the film. But using it as a backdrop, it's like a visual reminder And it's a good way of inserting it into the film without actually drawing much attention away from the main storyline. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about, so thank you for listening.
Hello, this video is for peer assignment number 2, the retaking of Weathertop. It's a walkthrough and analysis for online games, new media, narrative, and literature. And what we have here to start off with is the 5 members of our group which are going to take Weathertop together. We're all members of Course Room, a kinship on the Land Roval server. We have a lore master, a captain, 2 hunters, and a minstrel, myself, there in the center. And our goal on this epic quest line is to remove orcs from Weathertop and to push the orcs out of the area. And this is the end of the quest line given by Cadenth, and he's an NPC which follows the group along through Weathertop, opening up different areas. I apologize, first of all, the user interface is in French, but it shouldn't affect the analysis of gameplay. So, as we go through, you'll notice that the landscape of Weathertop appears similar to the book, and so that the book, for example, describes Weathertop as a dark and lonely place, and that's what it feels like in the game as well. In the book, it's described as a wide ring of ancient stonework, now crumbling or covered with age-long grass. Back in the center, a cairn of broken stone had been piled. They were black-ended as if with fire. About them, the turf was burned to the roots, and all within the ring of grass was scorched and shriveled, as if flames had swept the hilltop. But there was no sign of any living thing. Although the location in the game appears similar to what's in the book and what's in the movie, the space in the game is much larger than it is on film, and it's much larger than what I had imagined when I read the book. This allows for much more play space. It allows for a linear progression of the epic quest line as you move up Weathertop, and allows for, quite simply, space for all the enemies to be placed. In the film and the book, the representation of Weathertop differs. It provides a sense of progression, rather than the film and the book provide a sense of foreboding and darkness. And while the darkness has stayed, it's hard to present a sense of foreboding in the game when there's hundreds of enemies who have occupied this play space. So, for example, in the book, Weathertop is where the companions have stayed is described as over the lip of the little dell on the side away from the hill. And this is where, and I quote, they felt rather than saw a shadow rise. One shadow or more than one. They strained their eyes, and the shadow seemed to grow. Soon there could be no doubt. 3 or 4 tall black figures were standing there on the soil, looking down at them. So black were they that they seemed like black holes, deep shade behind them. Frodo thought, and then he heard a faint hiss of venomous breath and felt a thin, piercing chill. Then the shape slowly advanced. This quote provides that sense of foreboding which we associate with Weathertop, and the game, because it's providing an epic quest, can't provide that sense. It's certainly not with, as I said, hundreds of enemies and even a mountain troll at the top, which we're going to see soon.
Félicitations, mon ami.
And right now we'll notice that we're moving up to the summit of Weathertop. So one can only assume that shortly after the events in the book, orcs have taken over and they've built fences and gates. Okay. And as we come up, we're going to find Rheingold and his minions. And once we have beaten him down for the most part, he will summon his mountain troll. And the troll works very well with the pacing of an epic quest line. It's a final big boss, and it's part of a larger climactic battle, but it doesn't make sense logically. But what's the how are they keeping the troll in the box as we can see it, and it just comes out? But it's a very standard video game trope to have a series of smaller quests, mini battles, and then to have giant battle. So the game designers have clearly made some affordances for standard MMO quest lines. That's Weathertop has provided the scene here, and they've thrown a standard quest on top of it. No pun intended. As you can see, the party does quite well. There's no real threat from the troll, and we defeat him shortly. And that's that. The group has retaken Weathertop. And, in this case, we'll go on to finish another epic quest line, and which follows the same style, same mechanics as Weathertop.
Well, I think both of those essays did an excellent job of comparing the rendering of the Weathertop incidents in game and in film and in the novel. I think the in-game story is actually rather thin. It is essentially, the instance is essentially a boss fight, as opposed to many quests within Lord of the Rings Online that really tell compelling stories over quest chains. Some of my favorite are in Rohan, where we meet various small towns that all have their own little stories to tell. They're on one side or the other, or they don't know which side to side with, whether they want Theoden as a strong king, or they're advantaged by him staying weak. Those are very intricate, involved, and interesting stories. Coincidentally, one evening just down the road from Weathertop Mountain, near the Forsaken Inn, my minstrel character here in the foreground was surprised to see a whole group of people wending their way down the road and converging on the rather inaccurately named, in this instance, Forsaken Inn, and had to be curious as to what was going on that evening at the Forsaken Inn. And it turned out to be a meeting of Mythgard Mondays, and Mythgard Mondays is in-game kinship that meets to learn about lore, and they have in-game facilitators that lead sessions, but they also invite people from the academic world to come and speak to them about Tolkien. So this is a case where the learning is coming to the gamers rather than bringing new students into the game to learn about Tolkien through participation in the game environment. And I find there's a lot of opportunities for in-game learning that are facilitated by kinships and interest groups, and sometimes happen with spontaneous gatherings around someone who's an expert at some aspect of the game or has some knowledge to share. As you travel about Middle-earth, you can't go very far within the cities and towns without running into a soloist performing on an instrument, or one of the small Middle-earth ensembles playing on a street corner. Outside the Prancing Pony is a favorite place for groups to perform. And they're using a system called the ABC system. And these groups are player groups that meet and rehearse and have to learn how to use the ABC music system in order to play, whether they're playing pre-recorded files or playing manually, or a mixture of both. It's all something that players teach other players and facilitate their learning, and with the sole purpose of entertaining, of having a social aspect to the game.
Hey ho everyone, this is Forte Maestro, Dean here at the Academy of Music, and this is going to be the first lesson of 7 lessons. Just to basically get anyone who's new to the Lord of the Rings Online music system a familiarity of, first of all, how to download the music. Give you a brief summary of the anatomy of an ABC file. Teach you how to then launch music as a solo or as a band manually, without any type of plugins. And then once you've demonstrated that you're able, or once you've seen how to do everything the old school way, you'll be teaching you how to download plugins, which would be including like the songbook and lyrical and also poetical, which will aid you in your actual gaming, your actual music career as a Lord of the Rings Online musician. And so this first, and also of course in the end, the final lesson is teaching you how to create your own ABC songs using MIDIs. But to begin, you have to learn the basics. So in the beginning, if you've never done any music, or if you've never done so, you're going to have a music folder. And this is where all of your ABC files are going to go into. And so simply put, all you need to do is open up your file explorer, which is just going to be your standard folder on your computer. Inside of your My Documents, you're going to want to...
In conclusion, Lord of the Rings Online presents a unique opportunity for media comparisons across film, novel, and gaming. I would be hard-pressed, I think, to think of any similar situation, and certainly not with a novel and film as well rendered and game as well rendered, and with as famous a content that is universally known. This is definitely a unique opportunity, but there are very real challenges and lack of support for educators. It's just not set up for education, and particularly for bringing new players into the game. The level gates do present a challenge, and until there is some sort of a tourist mode or course mode in the game, without that, there are going to have to be workarounds, but there are definitely people who are doing wonderful things with workarounds. But there's also an active in-game educational community that are creating peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and also inviting outside lecturers into the game to share the knowledge with the community who are already established in the game. There's another couple of topics that I think educators might be interested in exploring if they venture into Lord of the Rings Online. And one is the fact that players are using some very high-level mathematical skills at times to make comparison to the various types of armor and jewelry and that are available that might improve their stats. And so I think there's a possibility for mathematical exercises and learnings that would be fun in the game. And another thing that I think would be interesting to researchers and students is the societies within Middle-earth, not the game societies, but the kinships that are established by players, and the various resource sharing that they do. It's there's something about the game and the way that it's set up to keep your inventory very low that leads to a certain amount of socialism in sharing of resources. But then there's also an auction house that is very capitalistic, where players get whatever gold, in-game gold, that they can for unique items that they've found or crafted themselves. I hope that this has been just interesting enough that you'll come along for the ride and come into the game and to give it a try, whether for your own enjoyment or as a possible educational platform. But warning, it's highly addictive.